Okay, so is everyone here? There's not any friends left in the lunchroom room. Before we get started, I was listening to Ed's talk on trade-ins, and I was thinking to myself that 20 systems from Finland actually seemed a bit light to me, because of course I'm the one that works regularly with these guys. So I actually went into the database and looked it up. Our friends from ReacTime have traded in 18 Algae cameras, 5 Omega cameras, 4 Selecta cameras, and 2 Lynx cameras, for a total of 29 cameras. And they've even traded in a ReacTime system, which is unique. Meaning a competitive a competitive false start system for a ReacTime system. Just to be clear. So what we're going to do here is it's not going to be a whole lot of me talking. It's going to be hopefully a lot of me listening and taking notes. I guess the news, which maybe all of you have not heard, is that for years and years and years, the IAAF has been going through this process to try to create a certification system for false start detection, along the lines of what they do for javelins and shot puts. And obviously, it's a little more complicated to certify a false start detection system than a javelin. So, not surprisingly, it took them a very long time. And we consulted with them all along the way on the process, and without boring you, it involved a lot of robots and hydraulic machines, running into starting blocks in a university in Cologne. And so we did a lot of flying back and forth to Cologne. All of our competitors did a lot of flying back and forth to Cologne. And at the end of the day, they came up with a process which was pretty broken, but I guess good enough for them. So, let me just give you a sense of what the certification process involved, just in case anyone asks you. The basic theory is, and this is they started out by creating this hydraulic robot that pressed up against the starting blocks and sort of made this little pulse on the pressure on the starting block at a certain amount of time after the blocks and after the gun, and the system was supposed to report that time, and I pointed out to them after many attempts that the system was not actually doing anything remotely related to what a real athlete does when they're in this set position, and I suggested that maybe what they might want to do is go and actually put force detection things on starting blocks with real athletes in them and take a variety of actual starts and then play that back into the robot so that the robot was at least doing something that was related to what real athletes were doing. So that's what they did. They went and got a couple hundred trials from real athletes. And so the certification process involves essentially attaching the false start detection to a set of starting blocks which are being impacted by this hydraulic robot that's essentially playing back force profiles from real athletes. Now, one of the problems is that the hydraulic system they built can't really replay the force profile back the way a real athlete does. And one of the key things it can't do is it can't actually generate force as quickly as a real athlete can. And so this is actually a problem that back up a little on the way false start detection systems work. In the case of ReacTime, and we believe some other systems, although we haven't gone to great lengths to show it, but there are ReacTime and many other systems appear to work using accelerometers. Okay, so basically we're just detecting that change in motion in the starting blocks, that little bit of change that happens when the athlete is moving. Other systems are using force detectors instead. And they will, in the early days, when Omega was the only one that had false start detection, they actually used force detection systems and a threshold, right? And I just remember this. Roger probably remembers this as well, but the threshold was something like 250 newtons of force, right? So it was arbitrarily determined that once the athlete was, applying 250 newtons of force to the starting block, that they must have to leave the starting block. Now, of course, the problem was you ended up with people like Donovan Bailey, I think, was one of the ones that was famous for this. Who was it?
Chris Hubbins.
Yeah. Who could apply that much force in the starting blocks in the set position. Right? And so the false start detection was screaming at the starter the entire time the athlete was in the set position. And, of course, it nullified the system because the starter didn't know what to do, because it was constantly in a state of detecting a false start that wasn't actually happening. So then Seiko moved to a system which was more based on the change in force. And that actually is the system that Seiko is still using to this day in that style of system, the system they still use in all the world championships. And Omega has since moved to a system that's similar to that. The problem with the system with the load sensors, with the force sensors in them, is that they require custom starting blocks. And one of the things we were trying to do was make something that was more affordable and easier to implement, and that's why we went to an accelerometer-based system. So that's a little of the history. So we got to this certification process, and we are working through this with the IAAF, and as we're going along, ReacTime is getting older and older, and we're really wishing we could make changes to ReacTime to sort of freshen it up, but at the same time, we didn't want to put any money into the development of ReacTime until we knew that the IAAF was going to certify accelerometer-based false start detection. So that's what we have now as of the end of last year. We have the word from the IAAF that ReacTime and the method that we're using is certified by the IAAF for false start detection. So the next step then is to think about what the next generation of ReacTime looks like now that we have confidence that it's worth putting some engineering resources into redesigning it. So with that, the first thing we have to do, because what we're going to do, or what I hope we're going to do, is we're going to have an open conversation about the future of ReacTime, what the product looks like. Right? So the first thing we need is a disclaimer. If I can find my disclaimer. This is my disclaimer, okay? We're going to be talking about stuff here, right? The contents of which should not be shared outside this room. You're welcome to shut that door back there. Thank you. And by contributing to this discussion, remaining in the room, you agree that we own everything. Okay? I don't want to get into discussions later on about how you came up with something that we then implemented in ReacTime, and you want some ownership right to it. Right? So another way to put that is that if you have an idea, and it's so good that you don't want us to own it, you shouldn't talk to us about it in this session. Okay? So by staying in the room, you agree to these terms. And no videos, cameras, or audio recording, please. Okay? Is everyone okay with this deal? Raise your hand if you're okay with this deal. Okay? We're taking pictures, by the way. Okay? We're taking pictures. You're not taking pictures. Okay, so the way I thought to just sort of get this going, there's some obvious things that everyone would like to see in ReacTime. So I'm just going to put up a slide that shows you some of the things that I came up with, sort of, and then we'll solicit things from the floor. That's a big one. Yeah, this is, I mean, one of the things that's happened, again, and a couple of people have talked about it a lot in the last 5 years. Everybody wants to move to electronic start. People don't like guns anymore. Managing how you deal with a gun sound that's coming out of each individual speaker or out of other speakers in the venue, managing this in a way that doesn't cause the athletes to think that a false start has happened because the sound is coming from very far away out of a different speaker or something like that. All this kind of thing is very important. We'd like to do something where the sound system, right now it's sort of integrated in with the ReacTime system. If you wanted just electronic start system that's on the speakers, or the starter's commands are coming through the speakers, something like that, you need to buy the whole system, the whole ReacTime system that you may not be able to afford or want. So sort of separating those two functions is a goal that I have. This is one that Roger has been pressing on before. It's again a common issue where, particularly what is one of the loudest parts of the race is as soon as the gun goes off, and if the recall sound is not sufficiently loud enough, then the athletes keep running down the track. I don't know how many years ago it was when we first developed ReacTime, but at the time, 2.4 gigahertz wasn't a very crowded frequency. Of course, now that's not so true anymore. So we need to come up with something that's much more immune to interference in particularly high-level venues where there may be television around. I'd like to do something where the system, and particularly the thing that is attached to the starting block, is much less expensive, and so that it's affordable to actually have a redundant system. Now, obviously, redundancy means something different when you have to make an instantaneous decision on whether there's a false start or not. Right? So really, the redundancy is in the health and the function of the system, not necessarily, you don't want something voting in your ear as to whether someone did a false start or not. Smaller, less expensive, I already mentioned. This is something that we worked on a lot with Matsport, and we actually have some good retrofit solutions now, and even the ReacTime system that we are making now is much more immune to cables getting spiked and things like that. But in the future, we'd like it to be even better as far as not having a single lane be able to bring the entire system down. I'd like to have Bluetooth in it and an app-based sort of training thing. Seems like the obvious thing to do. Internal radio links, like we have the new cameras, and integrated video replay, which is coming to a track meet near you for something where inside the ReacTime software you can have high-speed video, which is time synchronized. So that's what I got. Nice short list. So now I will open it up to the floor for your own ideas on what we should be doing. I couldn't possibly have gotten everything. Fred, you don't even do track and field.
Yeah, but it's athletics.
Oh, sorry, you don't do athletics.
See, it comes from the So, I mean, okay, but I'm a visual person, right?
Yes.
So, you, like that you have, you know, little LED status lights and so on built into the thing, so when the TV camera's like panning back, you know, they do the intros, right? The runners, and then they go back and they get set. You know, but they're still on this thing, creating this tension from the start, right? And if everybody, you know, if the little blocks, you know, had, you know, status light, you know, it indicated that everyone was ready.
The blinky light on the starting block.
Maybe not blinky, but just permanent light.
Right.
They don't want blinking, you want.
Right. No, not blinking, not blinking. Right.
And then when they leave, you want, I don't know, it's just staging like right?
A drag strip light. Okay, I'm trying to come up with a way to write to keep notes on this. Okay, drag strip light for the.
No, I mean we're doing starting gates for skiing on
Right.
gates, and they have a staging light and then.
Okay. All right. I'll put it for TV.
And honestly, yeah, everybody's streaming everything. So,
Come on. It's going to be a very short session if we don't start raising our hands.
Obviously, having some sort of communication currently on all sensors at all times, so that we know, kind of like when a camera goes red, we like to
Yeah. Block by block status.
yes. So when it does, it works.
Sorry.
So some sort of active feedback. Processes.
All right.
So about the problem for recall sound, so if maybe a strobe or something like that could be put at 15 meters or 20 meters in front of them, and
That's an interesting question, and I would defer to some of my IAAF people as to whether something like that would be acceptable. Yes, Paul? Different sound, right. Because then you're not in that situation where you hear a reflection or you hear a sound from another stadium speaker or something late and you think that it's a recall sound. Yeah. What do you think about the idea of a visual recall? Is that something that you think that I mean, I've never seen it before. I've never heard of it before, but it makes sense. I mean,
because we had problem with track cycling and that, and we tried to develop a strobe system in the half of the curve. So it's still
yeah.
I think in general, if you get a notification, talk about an in-stadium sound system starts, I think you need to have some sort of audio system down to start in. So in case of a fall or a recall, there's no way of currently letting the athletes know that you actually have a recall situation. So it's maybe a lot of flexibility within the
Right.
audio and visual. It's an option of bringing the track with speakers.
Right. Okay.
The possibility to connect a light system for disabled or Paralympics. Nowadays, it doesn't exist a real system for Paralympics.
So, we actually have something. It's on our price list, but we don't make it. Who do we get that from? Is Kevin here? Colorado Time, I think. Yeah.
Most of group guys use ReacTime because they have some
Mm.
tremor away.
But,
That, for example,
yeah, yeah,
have a light.
right.
Yeah.
So the point though is to integrate the starting light into the, or at least have the opportunity to integrate the starting light. Yeah.
Wow, battery life.
24-hour battery, so better battery life.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
battery and special connection chip on that. That's more and more an issue with iron development.
Interesting. Yeah.
We want that connection chip without
Oh, I like that one. So,
Make sure that you make the aggregate battery size under the threshold for air transport.
yeah, that's what Dennis was just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay the fine.
Good. Yeah.
Have you thought about no command center at all, building it into the software?
No command center at all, but just do it in software. Haven't thought about it. It's an interesting idea. Yeah. No.
That's actually not a bad idea. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
What about the sound in the headset of the staff? The one who need to listen to this sound, there is the staff, for the staff, the memory assist of the staff assistants. And this makes the staff to be confused sometimes.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, because
Now in the headset with the staff, he gave the someone for the staff. He's the one who gave the tone, okay?
the starter hears the tone,
Yeah.
and
So we should have the tone that is not assistance.
well, we have so in the system we have two headsets. One goes to the recall starter and one goes to the starter.
There's two staff assistants.
Well, you can.
Yeah.
There's no, unless I'm missing something. Where'd Kevin Holman go? He's like evaporate. Oh, there he is. No, you're trying to fool me by moving around the room. Is there any particular reason you could not have two recall starter headsets on a false start system?
Not that I know, you have to just use like the audio line cable.
Yeah.
I'll start output.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's just
Again,
listening.
You know, now you've got different views that may not be best quality.
But I think if it's just listening, I don't think it's a problem to have multiple headsets on the system. Can't. Oh, I think I see what you're saying. You're saying we're thinking about the environment in which it's an all electronic system, right? So sorry, I was not understanding your point. Right, your point is that recall starters need to be able to trigger the recall in an electronic start situation. Sorry, hold on. What? All right. Hold on. I need to do these things one at a time. I'm sorry. Are you going to whisper? I was whispering in my ear. Does that cover it? Can you still read it, or has my text gotten too small? Do I need to go to like a new page? I know what I do. Well, no, it's okay. I'll make it a little bigger. If we come up with too many more ideas, I'll make a new slide. Okay, this is great. Yeah.
How about option that can measure the power which to start for the training?
So to measure the power for the, so of course, ReacTime has its own version of power at this time. You can only see it in the, when you download the traces, you can see it on the screen of the ReacTime software. I don't know.
How many watts?
How many
Watt.
watts? Yeah, well, so of course the unit of force is newtons, but for us it's a little, you can't really translate what we're doing into force, because again we're using accelerometers to do it, and we're actually, without getting into too much details, the accelerometers we're actually not even, we're doing it in multiple dimensions, so it's a little, yeah. So you can't actually turn it into a number that means anything in an absolute sense, but what we've always said about the trace data is that it's useful in a relative sense, so you can compare trace data from one athlete to trace data from another athlete. But that's it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just thought about maybe you can do an automatic set.
Automatic set.
Yeah, start with the set.
Oh.
Then you have to push a button, put a set on to activate the system.
Oh, right. Right. Yeah.
Voice recognition.
Yeah.
So,
I'm gonna save this before I. Oh no, it's not gonna let me, is it? No. Okay. Good. But did I see your arm up, Roger?
No, it's looking over at.
You're just waving your arm.
To expand on the battery idea.
Yeah.
Maybe get some sort of like modular or maybe off the shelf type battery hookup, like a three-mount camera battery, electronic drill battery, or something you can
Right.
sit there and clip out quickly afterwards. Yeah. And water.
Yeah. So one of the things from a battery perspective, and maybe we should just talk about batteries for a minute, since I think it's not a bad topic. But the situation is different when you're running wireless than it is when you're running wired. When you're running wired, obviously you can provide all the power from that central location. When you're running wireless, every block has to have its own power. So how, the way it works, and the way I was thinking again, because if you think about it in terms of the sensor component wanting to be able to be like a training component as well, wants to have its own power. That power wants to be something that's fairly easy to get, like you're talking about, either AA batteries or something easily off the shelf. I don't know, how do you think about that? How do you and the other thing, of course, is that if you do run the command center in a PC application, you still need to be able to push power down the wire if you're running a wired system. Could you run an entire wired system off of power over Ethernet? I don't know. I mean, these are the kind of things we'd have to think about. But so just thinking out loud here, I mean, you know, from my own experience, the whole battery thing, we have looked at those kind of solutions in the past, like Ryobi drill batteries and things like that, and it just, the formats tend to seem to change so often that, you know, it's hard to come up with something that's going to survive for a long time that isn't just AA batteries, right? But if you have any ideas on what you think would be a good way to structure the power situation in this, I'm happy to, we don't have to talk about it in front of everybody, but I'm happy to talk about it offline.
What's the voltage you need?
Well, that's the thing, is we wouldn't know until we actually did something. Right now, you know, we're running on 24 volt, right? Or 12.
Well, we're running on the wired system that, yeah, 12 on the external power, but when you're running on the internal batteries, 4 double batteries.
Yeah, but to get power all the way down
All the way down because the cables are out.
Because the cables are out.
24 to make sure we
Yeah.
have more than 12 at 20.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you could adopt like a standard transponder system, multi-charger, where you put, wafer, lithium-ion wafer batteries and things, and just drop them into a charger bank. You have a giant link sticker on half of the day at the start line.
Right.
A package, in the case, and everything's dropped in and recharged.
Right.
We've been having a very good luck with wafer lithium-ion batteries for the last couple of years.
And see, I know nothing about what airlines like or don't like, but those are legal to carry.
Talk to the lab guys in my I think they're your battery experts.
Mm.
Right, but we do, because as far as batteries, your batteries last really well.
Okay. Good.
You have a wireless system, being able to run two simultaneously without interfering.
That's just you're just suggesting that would be an important thing. Yes. Okay. Right. So just make sure. All right. I think we're doing pretty well. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to sort of like box us into like this list of things either. I mean, if there's some higher level conceptual problem or idea you have about ReacTime, feel free to talk about it. The only thing, it's just now that we have what I would say the core of the concept, certified, I'd rather not have to go through that again with the IAAF. So, it's going to be, basically the accelerometer-based concept with the parameters and thresholds that they agreed to on the inside. And then everything else all around it can be whatever it wants to be, I think.
I love the idea of having identities at the start line as well, something like it.
Something like identities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you think about splitting up the competition system and the training system,
Splitting it up, meaning like two entirely separate designs.
not by design, but you have an exclusive system for competition. That's more robust and more like that.
It's really, so, I mean, the reason, really the issue is just that because of the volumes, which are so low, it's really hard to justify designing separate things for competition and training. So the goal really is to try to, make whatever it is. I mean, the thing that we have to do is the competition system. And if we can manage to sort of like have something that's useful for training as a result of that, and it doesn't add any cost to the competition system, then that's great.
Do you have an idea of the wireless infrastructure you want to use?
We haven't thought about it a lot. I mean, the issue is obviously, we need to have the bandwidth we need, but we also need to have something that doesn't need to be licensed all over, right? So, I mean, that's, we have, at various times I have thought that ultra-wideband, because we're doing ultra-wideband for the isolinks, would be a nice solution, but it has licensing issues. So, but, that's a discussion I'm happy to have, if you want to talk about that after. All right. Well, this is just really just kind of like to kind of get the creative juices flowing. You're welcome to come up and talk to me or send me an email whenever you want, as long as you understand that the rules still apply. Keep those really, really good ideas to yourself. All right, thanks.